Hey, Michael.
Hey, Diane, we're in person.
I know.
Two episodes in a row.
It's amazing. For those who are only listening, we actually are sitting together here in Boston, which is super fun. It's good to be on this coast with you. And for me, the best part of this is I got to have family dinner last night at
That's
your
true.
home. And I woke up this morning thinking about I just felt really happy. It
Oh,
was
good.
joyful. I think you know that my favorite night of the week is family dinner night at my house.
Your house, yeah.
And I hustle home so I don't miss it. And it was so fun to be with your girls and with Tracy. And I was thinking a lot about those few hours and like the learning that was happening
Yeah.
at that table. I mean, we got to play this board game that your girls had like invented and the dialogue and the conversation and the curiosity and that, they were making their own lunches, which called back to like
I was thinking of
Rhett
you.
cooking.
Right, I was thinking of Rhett. Yeah. But he was doing that from a young age. You guys, I remember scaffolding.
Yeah.
So fully
Yeah.
preparing meals
Yeah.
and shopping and everything.
Totally. And so that was really fun and to be back in that sort of younger age because mine are older. And I should say the thing I kept thinking is like, this is what learning is. And what if this is what it felt like? Which doesn't I wish everyone could have this
That sort of experience, yeah.
And yeah, so that was a good
No, it's
motivation
really cool.
for me.
I will say we also then had a conversation this morning about, she was like, so what night is family dinner night in the Tavenner household? And should we think about creating a similar structure as our girls hold up? So you being there also caused us, because I think it's intentionality also.
It is.
Right?
It
and
is.
that intentionality we both brought to
Yeah.
raising our kids
Yeah.
and now thinking about reinventing schools.
Yes.
And I think it was interesting because our previous episode, we were live as well.
Right.
We were at the ASU GSV Summit with Reed Hastings.
Yep.
And it was interesting to hear Reed, I think, for the first time in my memory, and I think that's what he said, talk about we actually need to reinvent the classroom model, the school model itself. We can't just be tinkering, if you will, toward utopia or layering over here and whatever else. That's obviously the tune we've been singing for most of our professional career.
Right. But it was fun. It was exciting to hear him talk about that and reflect on the work that he's done in different, elements of education and to really start to zero in on it. We have to work beyond just the classroom if we really want to transform the experience for young people. And so I guess it always feels good to be affirmed and validated.
Sure. We feel like geniuses now.
Yeah. So I think our plan for this today is a callback to mid-season where we did this in person, also kind of mid-season. Oh my gosh, we're learning so much. Let's get together and just reflect and process and talk about what we're learning after that first half of the season where we were really talking to sort of thought leaders and people who are thinking big picture and who understand AI and in AI. And so we thought we'd do that again, where, the back half of our big AI exploration season has really been with practitioners, I would say. And so what are they, what are we making? We had all these really fascinating conversations. This is our first time to really sit down and like sort through them and process them and understand what we heard. And then we've also been thinking about next season. And so we'll share a little bit of that.
We'll tease a little bit there. It's been interesting. And I'm glad process is the word that I've been thinking about because I think when people appear on our podcast, this sounds silly, but it's not an endorsement of their model or their tool or whatever it is by us. It's a genuine learning opportunity for us. And obviously we were both interested in new school models, which was 3 episodes that we had. And then we were interested in the ed tech tools that are coming up and using AI in different ways. And we were trying to process, we had this framework that you introduced in the last time we were in person in Cambridge or in Boston about the sort of Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3 schooling models. And the way I think we sort of categorized it there was H1 is sort of the industrial model that we know. And you had H3 as sort of this post-industrial model, and H2 is sort of this hybrid that is elements of both maybe and so forth. And so
I love that metaphor of the steamship that is outfitted with sails still, because it has to be running both because Steam is not reliable enough. You can't really get, all the functionality you need and trust it. So you have to still bring the, H1, if you will, into it. I'm glad you brought up the framework because that really shaped how I saw the second half of the season and had all those
Yeah.
conversations. I've actually been thinking a lot about that framework and how my understanding of it is sort of, I don't know, maybe becoming a little bit more nuanced
Okay.
as we talk with
Yeah.
people and think about these different models. And so that might be,
That may
for
be a
me, a
place
place to start.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
let's dig into that because, and you can take it wherever you want. I think it's a framework that I have found both useful and I've been struggling with, like, what is this H3 really going to
Yeah.
look like? Where does it really depart from the grammar of schooling as we've
Right.
known it? And do we really think we're going to actually get there, or are there going to always be this sort of H2 pulling us some of the elements,
Right.
like where, and then I guess I'll say the last thing, which will probably come up as we talk about the school models that we had on the podcast. Where are parents in all this? Like, where's
Mm,
their headspace? Because, like, what we
yes.
want, where parents are, where schools are, and for those that can't see my hand gestures, I actually think that's the continuum at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, historically, I think parents were more conservative than the
Right.
schools. I think that may have flipped.
Well, and I think there's some evidence of that with the growth in microschools
Hmm.
and sort of alternative, like people really sort of self bundling, if you will, the
I was shocked, by the way,
homeschooling.
some of the homeschooling. I read this
Yes,
morning in the
I did
74,
too.
10 million.
I know.
10 million families they
Yeah,
reported from this RAND survey that
yeah,
Johns Hopkins had done. I think it was Angela had done there.
right.
And I that's a big number.
It's a big number, and I think it speaks to this idea of where our parents, and I agree with you, they've historically been more conservative. I mean, I wrote prepared
Yeah.
it to try to, I call it a love letter to parents, like,
Yeah.
how to introduce them to some of the ideas of what's possible,
Yeah.
because my feeling was like they want one thing for their kids, but they don't know how to get it, and so they kind of double down on, the existing model, if you will. I actually think we're starting to see, at least for some, a break
I think
from
that's
that,
correct.
and not just a small amount, but, a
In some
growing.
cases, quite big.
Yeah.
In some cases, there's steps. And
Right.
I actually think that comes up. I don't know if you want to stay on the H1, H3 or go into the
Well,
models
I think
or,
what I would say, just a couple of reflections and observations. So, and kind of how I've been using that framework in
Great.
real life. So, one, I find that it is helping me be engaged in conversations with educators and developer, all the people who care about this work and who are working in it, who are thinking about AI, in that if I can just set the framework out up front and say, look, like, my passion is developing the post-industrial model and H3. And honestly, I don't think I've seen it yet. And I don't think it exists yet. And that's not a bad thing. That's fine. But let's not like pretend that certain things are H3 or that they are a real new model. We might have that conversation in the models conversation when
Yeah.
I don't think they are. And you brought this up the last time we talked, like, we also need tons of kids are in H1. They're going to be in H1 for a
Sure.
while. How do we use AI to make those experiences better? So I think when I'm able to like say to people, which conversation are we having?
Yeah.
Where are we working right now? And the key for me has been, how do we not constrain or compromise work in developing the post-industrial model or the H3 place by working on H1? And
Yeah.
that is a real risk, I think,
Yeah.
because, I mean, there's so many like elements of H1 policy and norms and practices and tools that just codify and solidify that model and then therefore prevent unintentionally the invention of new models.
And we talked about that some in the mid-season in terms
Yeah.
of you named assessment and special education in particular in those. I think there's a lot more, and frankly, in the
I'm going to
last
add a new one.
well, since we
Yes.
recorded, I think we have seen the fastest growth in my memory of a series of policies around screen time. Cell phones were already emerging, but
Yes.
now into screen time in general that I don't love, but well-intentioned
Right.
in H1
Right.
that are like diametrically opposed
Absolutely.
to, I won't call them H3, but I will say like these new models of schooling that are appearing by education entrepreneurs in sort of this H2,
Right.
H3 nebulous
Right.
area.
Right. I couldn't agree more. The other one that I would add is the place that I'm working every day right now. So let's call it the sort of college and career
Okay.
counseling and readiness world, if you will. And it's just so clear to me that, the goals in that area by the vast majority of people are to improve college and career counseling and readiness in the H1 model.
Yeah.
And I keep saying, like, if we're successful at that, don't we just codify this
Mm,
entire system? Don't we
yeah.
reinforce it and bolster it and prevent ourselves from moving to what I believe is, and certainly what we're trying to do at Future, which is life navigation, whole human development, like enabling young people to emerge into a life of flourishing, to launch into a fulfilling life,
Yeah.
not just get accepted to college or, take that next sort of educational step, if you will, which is what is happening right now, I think, in H1. And so just the whole, I don't think I've convinced a lot of people of
Well,
that yet, but
so it's interesting. I think it is a risk, one,
mhm.
but and so I agree with you, no surprise. But two, I'm going to take a theory that we use in my class and
Great.
from the Clay Christensen playbook, if you will, value networks.
Great.
And Tom Arnett has been writing a lot about this at the
Okay.
Christensen Institute. And basically, the way I'll say it is this: when let's use an analogy, when RCA and these large vacuum tube consumer electronics products,
Mhm.
they got disrupted by Sony and these transistor-led
Great.
products. It wasn't just Sony replacing RCA. It was also all of the component suppliers of RCA got
Yes.
disrupted by a
By the
whole
whole
new
new
batch of component suppliers because they
Interesting.
were completely plug-in compatible
Yeah.
with the old and
Yeah.
vice versa. And then it wasn't just that. It was also retail got completely disrupted. So
Mm.
RCA sold through appliance stores that made their money not by
Ah,
selling RCA
yeah.
products, but by
By
repairing.
repairing,
Right.
of course.
Right. Because these vacuum tubes would
Yes.
blow out. Sony got sold in discount retail. Target, Walmart,
Yeah.
Kmart,
Yeah.
all birthed in 1962.
Oh my god.
And so it's and so the shorthand that we used to say at Entangled, where I spent some time, was systems disrupt systems.
Mm.
And so in some ways,
Mm.
like you're building the new system. Now, I will tell you the struggle I have when I teach it in my class,
The case.
which is we use a few school networks as like
Okay.
different versions of this. So we have Virtual Learning Academy Charter School in New
Mm.
Hampshire, Big Picture Learning, like a
Mm.
few of these that Tom has written
Mm.
some case studies on. And every single one of them at some point pull back into the existing system. And
Yeah.
and Tom's answer to this is always like, well, yes, we inhabit Earth.
Yeah. It's
Right.
the gravitational
Like
pull,
we
right?
are not
Yeah.
completely free at
Right.
Mars yet.
Yeah.
Sorry, Elon. And but like, so where is the limit of exchange of these systems,
Yeah.
and where are crosswalks not distorting these new things, and
Yeah.
where are they, to your point,
Yeah.
actually codifying like grooves on a train track that are impossible to escape?
So that's an interesting segue into talking about the three models
Okay.
that we talked
Yeah.
about, I think, during the season,
Let's do it.
because, we specifically wanted to talk to Alpha School because like everyone was talking about Alpha School. There was a lot of sort of PR and marketing out there about them, but we kind of wanted to really get under the hood and understand, was this a new invention or not, and
Yeah.
what was going on. We wanted to talk to John Danner, who was the co-founder of Rocket Ship and now starting Flourish, literally a AI native, designed as an AI native model. So what does that mean?
By the way, his is the only one that's actually AI native, if you
Correct.
think about it, because Alpha
It's true.
dates back to 2014 or
It's
whatever
true.
it is.
Yeah.
And then Summit, of course.
And then we talked to Summit about, their vision to create the next generation of model, which would be AI native. So I'm curious.
Play you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Ask your question. Ask your question. Go ahead.
Well, what's your impression of those three? I mean, how did you come away from, what were you believing that they were
Yeah.
actually inventing Horizon 3, AI native?
I
What is your
think, yeah, it's
takeaway?
a good question. I think this is where I'm struggling with the framework
Okay.
because I still can't completely imagine all the features of H3. And so I
Yeah.
think let's tease this for next year's. I think
Mm,
we should construct a little bit more clarity around what really is H3 and
I
what are the
think so too.
distinguishing
Yeah.
characteristics. Because I think in my world, I sort of I don't know, Montessori feels like it has a bunch of these. And if
Mhm.
I look at the alpha model, I actually see some tiebacks to Montessori. I see some tiebacks, ironically, to big picture learning and things like that. Let's put that aside for a
Yeah.
moment. In some ways, they feel like the closest sort of pulling from both sides of it
Mm,
in very clear ways. Flourish to me felt like the closest to what I might imagine H3
it
in a
could.
middle school
Yeah,
model.
I think it
And
has the
potential, we
potential.
don't know yet, right? And
Yeah.
I appreciated John's honesty
And
with
yeah,
where they are.
totally.
And then I had this, I'll tell you my take on Summit.
Okay.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
Because that's your baby. And you asked this question before we recorded, so no one
Mhm.
knows you asked me this question. But you said, I'm wondering how you're going to respond and react to this. Because in your mental model, Michael, to disrupt yourself, you need to have a completely separate, et cetera, et cetera. And then the old migrates out to the new, and that's not what they're doing. So I had this thought, though, as I finished, because I didn't know what to expect. I
Yeah.
came in with it a little bit
Yeah.
hackles up a little bit. And then when we finished it, my reflection was this, which is when there's another way to survive disruptive innovation that we don't talk about that often, which
Okay.
is because I think it's less proven. But
Okay.
the way is you are so clear on the job to be done that you
Okay.
do. Your mission, what you don't do, your priorities, what you don't prioritize, et cetera. That when new technologies come in or new features, you can swap them out very cleanly because
Interesting.
everyone in the organization understands this is what we do. So
Interesting.
let me give you an example outside of an
Yeah.
industry, and then I'm going to let you fill in the blanks in
Okay.
Summit. So there's this retail store that
Mm.
came in at the quote unquote low end
Okay.
that has never gone up market and never been disrupted by online retail. And it's called IKEA. You probably know it.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
my children love it.
Right. And IKEA, we have become convinced they do one job to be done really well, which is I need to furnish this apartment today.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
and they're not selling heirloom furniture. They're not
No.
trying to go high
No.
end, nor are they threatened though by discount furniture or Wayfair
Right.
or any of these folks because the job to be done is so distinct and clear. And they lay out the entire store
Yeah.
like you're walking around the
So clear.
apartment and you fuel up midway through on
Yeah.
Swedish meatballs and
Right.
and so a new technology comes along and their simple question always is, does it help us get the job to be done
Yeah.
accomplished better, or is it irrelevant to us? And if so, so take China, for
Do they
example.
ever ask if that job still needs to be done?
That's probably a good question, but I think at the moment it
You
has.
probably have to.
I think that
they
they
probably
should.
keep
I don't
finding
know
that
the
that
answer.
job keeps needing
I think it's
to
still
be done.
relevant, right?
Okay.
And they probably say the market's
Yeah.
pretty big.
Right.
It's a good question. But so in China, it's interesting. In the US, we drive large cars. So we pick out the furniture with the stickers and then we go down to the bottom thing and we pick off these flat carts and we put them on that cart and we check out and we drive off in our cars and we assemble them really easily.
Right.
In China, they don't have big cars. And so IKEA will deliver it to your house same day. Yes.
Which is key.
Super
right?
integrated around the job. And they can make those sorts of decisions because does it help us get the job to be done or not? Context changes, fine.
Right.
We just know what our true north
Such clarity.
is. Such clarity, right?
Wow.
And so it prevents them from
And
going up market. And
specificity.
specificity, right? And you can imagine all the ways that trickles down, I think.
Mm.
And so my read when we were listening to Summit was now, you could argue your mission changed, right, when you moved away from sort of the college, but I would say not really. I would say it was more clear. You actually were really clarifying what it meant to educate a prepared human.
I agree. I agree.
So
sharpening, clarifying
the metrics.
And talking about it in a way that was more resonant.
Yeah, to the families you serve.
In the moment. Yeah.
So I guess my point is, when I heard what y'all or what Summit is doing,
Not me.
The team at Summit.
Big fan.
Katie and Dan.
Big.
And the whole team at Summit. Big fan. They see, Summit Learning got ripped out and they're like, okay, we can design this new technology with AI or partner or whatever it is to accomplish what is the school that Dan walked us through very helpfully, I thought, on that episode. And like, they could reinvent expeditions, but again, it's not changing the DNA and the mission and clarity of the place. It's more like, how do we sharpen the processes and better get them done right now with the tools available?
Yeah.
I think that's very possible.
Without being disrupted, to be very relevant, and the adoption of that.
And that job to be done is still, like, the prepared thing is not changed.
No, it has.
So,
if anything,
to answer your question,
it's maybe more relevant. Oh, that's such an interesting...
Here's where we get to say we didn't tell each other our
no, we
talking points in
didn't. We
advance,
literally wait to talk about these things. That also brings me probably back to Alpha, because using that lens, I'm trying to think if I feel like Alpha has that level of specificity and clarity in a job to be done, or if they
I'm sure
don't.
they do.
I don't think they do.
I'm not sure they do.
Yeah, because their model feels a little bit more like this, like you said, there's a little piece from here and a little piece from there and a little piece from there, and they're kind of stuck together, but it's not clear what they're adding up to necessarily.
I don't disagree with that. To me, not just from our episode, but in subsequent conversations and things of that nature, what I've taken away from Alpha... Okay, let me say it differently. I think the thing that probably bothers you the most is the disconnection between the morning academics and then the life skills learned in the afternoon, is my guess.
For sure. Just this sort of absence of intentionality and I just don't understand how you have a model.
Them separated.
And
so my takeaway is, I don't disagree. For my kiddos, I would agree as well. And I also think relative to the current system, it's still significantly better than what most families would be getting on both dimensions, I think.
Yeah, and then you have to talk about ROI. Like, is it
so the dollar,
$75,000
the price point?
better?
Yeah, so let's actually talk about that, because I agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's not what I would price it at. But I also cynically understand pricing it that high. This is a higher education thing that I hate, right? It always, Western Governors University is not seen as a prestigious university because they charge $6,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're amazing at their job to be done. But the game is like, if you come in at this high price point in the absence of metrics that people universally really can understand and agree on, they equate price to quality.
It's a luxury brand. It's a luxury good. And so they burst onto the scene and sort of signal to people with lots of money that
and they did break.
Brand.
I mean, we've been frustrated. We haven't been able to break into the conversation. We said that up front in the 2 hours. I think that's been a way for them actually to do it. And so I've sort of like, I'm living in this dual world where I'm like, it's not how I would do it.
Yeah.
It's not. And I get it. Like, I get what it's accomplished for them. And there are many parents for whom, like, they're really desperate they're running toward it, or maybe running away from something. That's more, I think, the truth.
Those are the conversations I've had with parents. When parents are running away from something to a variety of different choices, depending what's on the table for them, which, again, I always take as feedback as someone who wants to be in the system and serving the majority of young people. I'm like, you got to pay attention to that when people are running from what you're offering. And, where are we not meeting their needs? And really, to me, this is what it means to like co-design and work with communities to create this public good, if you will.
Yeah.
The other thing that came up for me in the models, and this is on Flourish, but it's come up a lot this year, and I'm curious what your thought is. You just talked about how the conventional wisdom is that, to disrupt yourself, you have to sort of, wall off that new innovation, which was certainly the approach I took when I was leading Summit. I'm glad to know there's another pathway. I think I talk to a lot of people right now who view microschools as that possibility. I think that's what they're thinking. So by people, I mean, whether it be school districts who are thinking about starting micro
Mm,
schools where they think they're going to do their innovation there, charter school networks who are thinking about doing their innovation there. Certainly John.
yeah.
John.
Yeah.
Danner
Yeah.
is thinking about, is starting as a micro school. And he talked about how he thought that the scaling there would be easier and whatnot. I'm skeptical of the micro school as the place where you can actually design a new model. And the
Okay.
reason that I'm skeptical, and I'm curious what you think, is I actually don't think at the micro level you work through so many of the elements and principles and systems of an actual model. Like, I just can't imagine serving 50 million kids a year in micro schools.
Interesting.
Like, I just don't think that adds up to a system
Yeah.
of educating the number of young people we need to educate. And so, but I could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, like, how do you make what do you actually learn and develop in a micro school that is transferable to a larger school or a larger system or a larger model? I feel like there's a lot of gaps there.
That's interesting. A lot of thoughts. So we'll go through them. So one, and then push back because
Mhm.
I don't, so on the district and charters using micro school,
Yep.
I would say promising, but I'm unconvinced. And the reason I'm not convinced is I still don't see the mechanism. Let me say it this way.
Okay.
Districts for years have had alternative schools to
Right.
serve people who
Right.
dropped out of the system. Great area of non-consumption. I've written a lot about how I
Yeah.
thought it could be a disruptive thing, but the thing that they don't do is disruption has to grow and people have to migrate out to it,
Right.
and no one migrates out to it,
No.
right? And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think part of it is the business model. Charters are a little different, but the business model of districts is the district. It's not the schools.
Correct.
And so
Yeah.
schools take on the
That's
thing of
a bigger
pilots.
system. And I'm like, how does that micro school in any way help us understand and transform the system?
Yeah. No, and so I don't know that I am convinced that the dual transformation
Mhm.
strategy works there,
Mm.
even though I've recommended districts do this because I don't see another avenue for them. Let's leave aside charters for a second. I guess I would push back on maybe I would relabel it from micro schools.
Oh,
I don't actually,
interesting.
I'm moving away from that phrase because I think
Okay.
micro implies small.
Yeah.
And if I look at what I think the most promising disruptive innovations in this new schooling space are, I don't think the feature is necessarily small.
The size.
Yeah, I think the feature is that it's a low cost private school. And
Mm.
so like Flourish it's small at the moment, but it
Yeah.
may end up being several hundred students, I could imagine. Maybe John would say no.
Yeah.
Con Lab School was originally a micro school. It's like 300 kids or something
Wow.
like that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's grown. You wouldn't call
Yeah.
that micro
No,
anymore.
I'm not sure you call it low cost either.
Well,
But
that's fair. That's
yeah.
fair also. Right. So, but I guess the point being, that's a good push, by the way. But I guess I am somewhat optimistic still that like we'll have hundreds and thousands of these
Mm.
different schools, and some of them will be chains and some of them will be
Mm.
sort of your local coffee shops,
Mm.
sort of if you think about the
Yeah.
mix. And I do think families are potentially going to move out of the district system
Yeah.
into these new things. Now, I have two thoughts on what you're saying, which is like, but how do you do all these people? Like the size and complexity. And I guess I have a couple thoughts. One, I think I don't think we can know the answer to that until they start to grow in size and complexity and solve the next problem. And there's a tendency of people in education to want to design the system top
It's
down.
so true.
And I don't think that's how it's going to work.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
one. But the second one is, I think I can imagine a lot of families in more bespoke, smaller communities
Mm-hmm.
like these 10. I mean, if it's truly 10 million of
Mhm.
50, like that's already 20%
Yeah.
in that are DIYing. And is the future system 100% that? I doubt it, but it could be 70%.
What's interesting to me about that is, so the DIYing, and this was the point of that article this morning, is literally people, it felt like summer to me when I was like organizing all these summer camps and these
I know where you're going
activities.
here. Yeah.
And so these parents are like assembling and essentially duct taping together the micro school part tending to be more of like online,
Or it's
digitally
like
driven
they're like
learning.
2 days a week there.
Plus these real
online
world
tutors,
experiences.
real world experience. It's like the set of 3 things.
Yeah. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's a parent sort of cobbling all those things together. But if you're a micro school that the parent's going to you because they're expecting you as a school to put all those things together, how do you do that? If it really is about small, how do you have all those real world experiences that like we're imagining for a small number of kids? I just don't understand.
And this is
how
where I
it
think we agree,
works.
which is I personally think like the upmarket trajectory of the sector, because disruption comes at the low end.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve most people and has to serve more complicated use cases, which is what I think you're describing. And so I don't know what that looks like, but my current thinking is maybe all these micro schools plug into what's a community center and it's actually kind of permeable between them. I think your argument would be H3 is actually the operating system underlying how these all connect to each other, which we haven't created yet. And then the second thought I have also is like, frankly, like Odyssey and Class Wallet and all these things that are trying to direct education savings accounts. I think they have to reduce the complexity of like stitching this together. And it's almost like you used to say this when you were in COVID operating Summit, you had like the different flavors or you go up to the sub shop and like
the
menu
sandwich.
item. Exactly,
It's the ordering the sandwich.
But I kind of think that's what we start to like take the coordination out of it. Because most families aren't going to be able to coordinate.
I can order the signature sandwich where there's no substitutions, but I know that I'm getting like the Santa Cruz that has turkey and avocado.
And
sprouts,
most families are not going to be able to do, and when they do, it's not going to taste very good, to use your analogy.
To make their own.
And so I think like that's the other part of the innovation we haven't seen yet. And so sort of my evolution in thinking has been
interesting.
It's the coordinating infrastructure. It's like the different reassembled parts that coordinate, like maybe it's hop, skip, drive is part of this ecosystem. For those that don't know, that's sort of disruptive to the bus.
It's like the Uber of busing, essentially.
Exactly. Right. And like all these things, maybe this new system and future, I would think would be part of it. And anyway, but I almost think the way that happens is like we're going to just have to solve each next problem. To try to take more students and more families.
And I think that comes back to this idea that I guess maybe you're helping me realize that I've been sort of experiencing the micro school as like people who are like, oh, we're going to reinvent education in the classroom. Like individual classroom teachers are going to reinvent education. And so micro schools were starting to feel like that to me. I'm like,
that's a good point.
No, we're not going to reinvent this system. So what you're helping me see is like, we have to like effectively scale though. If we want them to be micro, if it is about small, or we need to understand the principles and then figure out how they all kind of coordinate and work together to scale up the system, because the system is the actual, if you think about it, the industrial model, most people don't go to their school and think this is like a factory. Because the factory is the underlying infrastructure of how everything runs.
That is the operating system.
That is the operating system. And I think what I want and what you want is a post-industrial operating system that enables and allows the experience we had at family dinner last night. Like that type of human learning, and it counts, and it has all. And so will some of the features of those schools look like the ones we see today? Of course. Of course they will, because there's amazing things that happen today, and those, of course, get pulled into that. But it's that underlying infrastructure that really transforms, I think, everything.
I think that's right. I sort of want to jump into the tools.
We
probably have a couple things we want to pull back onto the schools on, but we can go back we can iterate. But so it's interesting. I think timely, interestingly enough, right?
So this was our conversation with Paymon.
Paymon, we should say this to remind people.
Who was working on how do you make a better master schedule. And I think what I agree with him completely as someone who was fanatical about the master schedule. That embodies all of your values and your resources, your master schedule does, and yeah, so he's really trying to make that better.
Yeah, and he is clearly designing in the H1,
Uh-huh.
but I think the takeaway I had from it is one thing AI can be really good at is simplifying a lot of these logistics and time and
Yes.
getting the right experience at the right time for the kid who
Yes.
maybe can't, their family or guardians or whatever it is can't line that up
Right.
for you. And like
Right.
all like, so when you think about this operating system of industrial model, we move from class to class, it's all there in the building, it's not outside of the building, to something that is much more porous and flexible and so forth. My thought from like the takeaway from that conversation was, wow, AI could be incredibly helpful at this coordination, logistics, pulling in resources truly from the community, and each kid probably having different mixes of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll say with
Yeah.
my community center model, just
Yeah.
idea for a
Yeah.
second of like multiple microschools, if you will, or whatever we want to call them, plugging in is you can almost imagine a parent saying, like, I want to opt out of parts of this
Totally.
because I will manage this.
Yeah.
And another parent being like, or, having a conversation where like, please help.
Right.
And you being like, okay, we're going to line up 3 amazing outside of school experiences for
Right.
you. And then you're going to jump into this learning experience
Mhm.
here. But then like, you're going to do this project at this other
Yeah.
one here because like, we're hearing what your goals are and where
Yep.
your struggles are and like the
Yep.
questions. And we're, by the way, seeing you could use some exposure to this to even understand, is this something you
Yeah.
hate or like, or et cetera?
And I think what you're doing right now is sort of starting to illustrate the difference between industrial model Horizon 1. So Paymon and Timely are working on a master schedule that's still within the confines of a building, a 5-day week schedule that's kind of 8 to 3, that's classrooms, I call it the egg crates. It's like 1
Yes,
to
that great
25,
class.
like
Yeah,
all
that great
these,
school building. Yeah.
So that's what he's doing. But now you're talking about, in my mind, a new operating system that would greatly sort of expand beyond those boxes, those little egg crate boxes, to all the possibilities that could be practically now assembled and personalized for families and kids. And so that kind of would be the H3 version, I think, of
That's
what
interesting. Okay.
Timely would
I'm learning
do.
a lot here already.
Don't
Okay. Yeah.
you
No, I
see?
think I'm 100% and I'm getting clarity now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a perfect example of like, yes, Paymon, go, please. Like there's like another school year is coming and please, can we get off the magnetic whiteboards where people are still like by hand
Yeah.
trying to create master schedules, which we know is not going to deliver, and use AI to do that significantly better, significantly faster, in a significantly more personalized way. So I thought that was an exciting tool for that reason, and it provides that clarity we just said. I think that, yeah, I'm curious.
Okay. Where are you going to go?
I can't decide
You're
where to
pausing.
go.
It's okay. It's okay.
I can't decide because, well, let's just remind people of the other folks we talked to. So we talked to Daisha Toll, who is working on Course Mojo, which is the ELA sort of in classroom experience. And I think I would kind of bucket that conversation with the one we had with Matt Pasternak, who is at Once. He's working on reading younger kids and how they read, starting very sort of human based and then bringing in AI to support. And if we remember, he's doing really interesting things of how you're using all the people resources.
Giving really cool experiential opportunities potentially for high
Right,
schoolers.
right. Which takes me back, as you were talking a minute ago, and I'm thinking back to Dan Eflin's like description of, at the most stripped down basic level, what is a school?
Yeah.
And I love this framing, and I think about it all the time now, which is like, it's literally it's a group of students, it's a group of young people. It is a set of objectives or outcomes that those young people are trying to reach, and it's a bundle of resources we have to help them do that. Like at the end of the day, that's the most stripped down version. And I think Once is super interesting in how they're thinking about the potential resources. High school kids, instruct to teach young kids in the virtuous cycle that's sort of created there.
I just had this thought. I hadn't had it before, but there's like both a very cool career potential, right, of teaching for those
Yes.
kids. Also, frankly, though, if they don't do that, because I can imagine some people being like, oh, this is like very self-determinative or whatever, and I don't know how I feel about that. I actually think it's also a very cool, like, parenting sort of
Yes.
101 opportunity, if you will, for
Yes.
kids to get experience with younger kids and learn about the science of reading and
Yes.
like some of the motivation stuff that I'm sure Matt is baking in and things
Definitely.
not to do and so
Definitely.
forth.
And I would add a third is the entrepreneurial nature of this.
Sure.
So I talked to him about how could high school kids create summer businesses
Oh, that's
where they're
interesting.
using once to tutor kids in their neighborhood,
Oh, huh.
and set up like little entrepreneurial ventures,
Oh,
which
that's
he's
cool.
super excited about and open to. And so that type of creative thinking about, recognizing and seeing high school kids as resources to help anyone learn, but other, especially younger kids to learn. I love that kind of thinking. I wish it were just across the system, in so many different ways.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
One thing that we have talked about that I think is worth bringing up here is we both noted with both of those conversations how these are not these have required significant human expertise to create these products sort of in collaboration with AI, if you
That's
will.
a good way to put it.
And I think Daisha did a good job of really walking us through like the level of intentionality and intervention and human expertise that has gone into creating those really cool, important, rigorous experiences in the classroom. So I'm curious, like, what you think about that and how you process that.
So I agree.
Yeah.
I will tell. I'm just gonna be honest. I left the Daisha conversation glowing for like 10 hours afterwards.
Oh,
I was so
so
excited,
good.
and I think a large part of it was because of what you just described,
Yeah.
with the intentionality of what is great, not just like good, great practice look like,
Yes.
and let's recognize that like 80+% of teachers don't have the training or background or can't
More than
time or
80.
whatever.
Like, what she
Yeah,
described happening in that classroom is humanly impossible to do. I
right,
don't
right.
care how good you are.
Totally agree,
Yeah.
right? But like even if you were one-on-one or
Right.
one-on-two,
That's fair.
like a lot of teachers
That's
still
fair.
don't have that background,
True. True.
right? And she's looking at the best practitioners
Yeah.
to think about the next best question
Right.
with the text, like really deep in the text.
Mm,
And that's something I think that often comes up also, right? Is you can't just do this in a
yes.
generalized way. Like
Yeah.
actually really digging in is
Yes.
important to create this instructional tool. So impressive. I also really appreciated how she was like, look, in your framework of H1 through, like she engaged in that framework and was like, I'm on the H1, maybe H2 part of this.
Yes.
I found that really helpful because
I
like it
agree.
immediately, it's like, this is where I'm sitting. But by the way, I can easily imagine what she's built being part of an H3 set of offerings as well.
I think that's right. And so let's go there because my current favorite provocation, I'm probably driving a lot of people crazy with
That's
this,
okay.
is what if, and what I asked them to do is pretend for a minute that we can never, ever, ever again have classrooms with one teacher, 25 kids, 5 days a week, 50-minute periods. I don't even care if you have a block schedule every other day for, 90 minutes. We can never do that again. Imagine we can never, ever do that again. How are kids going to learn? Can we like expand our imagination how they can learn? And the reason I'm provoking this is I loved everything Daisha said and agreed with you. I left sad because of the
Mm.
comment where she was like, yeah, they're doing it a couple days a week.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like,
Why just
we're
occur?
going back to the 1 in 25 egg crate to do all these other things, and we're just doing that. Why? Why aren't we doing that more? Why aren't we doing that really strategically or what? Like, I don't understand, this, yeah, how we're thinking about that. And so that felt depressing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. I think it speaks to something different that we were going to hold on, but I'm going to go there
Okay,
now
great.
because you've been forwarding me pieces around the adoption of AI in the
Yes,
workplace.
yes.
And Reed used the analogy that we've both loved for some time that Ethan Mollick at Penn uses, which is like thinking about AI like electricity.
Yeah.
And this sort of, there was the paradox, right?
Yeah.
Electricity got introduced. It didn't actually increase productivity
Mhm.
until you redesigned
Right.
the business models and factory models
Right.
around it so you could distribute as opposed to have this
Right.
central drive shaft. And I think the same thing is playing out right now in industry, which is
Mhm.
like AI, more of a cost add, maybe
Mhm.
marginally productivity, particularly for coders, but like
Mhm.
maybe not elsewhere. And large parts of enterprises are
Yeah.
frankly not using it to its
Right.
theoretical capacity.
Right.
And I think the same thing may be true in schools right now as well. Maybe this will get us into magic school, unless the tool fits the workflow exactly as you've currently designed. And
Mhm.
like Dacia's thing, it does, like, you
It
do need
does.
to rethink
Yeah.
use of time
You
and
do.
space,
You
right?
do.
And like
You do.
and activities and instructional plans and coherence. And like,
Yes.
it raises all these questions that are
Yes.
problems in the current model.
Correct. Correct. You're right. I have been forwarding you lots of things because, I love to do this. I love to go and look out into other industries because it helps me sort of understand the principles and kind of what's going on. And then I feel like sometimes I'm too close to it in education. And so I need that sort of distance to then come back and look at what we're doing through that lens.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that happened to me this season is I just engaged in a whole bunch of conversations with people who are in different industries. And I've been really trying to deep dive into how are you using AI and how are you bringing it into your company or your work or what you're doing? How is it getting integrated and whatnot? And these articles I've been sending you this last week was profound to me. This line of inquiry has led me to believe one, and I'll just say this again, AI is not changing education, full stop. Like the only thing that will change education is humans. We can use AI as the tool to do it, but AI is not changing education. There's zero evidence that it's changing education. One, in my view. And then two, it doesn't appear to be changing business as fast as everyone's
Yeah.
at. And so like we
Yeah.
started this season with me feeling like
Yeah.
this is like coming. It's coming like a tidal wave and it's going to hit us and we have to get
That's
ready and
interesting.
it's going fast. And I'm ending this season like, oh no, this is electricity. This is a 70-year
That's interesting.
project. Like, calm down. We actually have time because it's just not coming that way. And the specific thing that came this week that crystallized it for me is learning that all of the hyperscalers, so OpenAI, Anthropic, and Gemini, in some form or fashion, different but similar, literally are paying a lot of money to, let's call them an intermediary or third party, to force companies to adopt AI and integrate it into their workflows because it's not happening naturally.
Yeah.
What appears to be happening naturally is like all these companies jumped on, okay, let's do a pilot, let's figure this out. They've been running those. They're not working. And so they're tossing AI. They're like, no, we're not going to
Well,
do
because
that.
it's expensive. The compute power, the tokens,
All
right? It's
the,
expensive and
and
people aren't using it. Like, because they're
it's
not
not
changing
happening the way they thought. And so, in OpenAI apparently is going to give their private equity companies a huge amount of money to force their companies to integrate AI, OpenAI,
We'll see if any of that money materializes,
we
depending on the business
will.
model of that. I mean, that's another shaky thing on all this. Is
Yes.
like, which companies will still even be here at the end of this?
T-
Google probably
totally.
will, but like, we don't know. Yeah.
Right. And I think it was Anthropic who's going more of the consulting route. So McKinsey and those folks, and they're going to use them to try to deploy it. And Google had what was their strategy? Like a combo of the two or something like that. Anyway, I'm like, if it's not happening in business where they actually put resources to these things and efficiency is their, the way they're competing, it is not happening in education. We don't have the resources to do what they're doing. We don't have the incentives they have. And so it just gave me sort of like, in some ways, a good breath of like, oh, we
That's
have
really
more
interesting.
time. And then two, oh, unless we actively do this, this is not going to be the tool that helps us.
Yeah.
transform.
So stay on this. This is really interesting on a few fronts. You're crystallizing something I'd been thinking about, but hadn't fully dawned on me, which is, I do think what's true in the business world, and I think it's very true in the education world, is individuals are using it in bespoke
Yes.
ways.
Yes.
And like I've been thinking about some danger of recording, and then this won't be out for a few weeks, but I've been thinking about writing something around how, like, for years, education was like the last place to adopt technology.
Yes.
Right now, it's actually adopting technology very quickly, and that's the problem. And the reason I say that is I think teachers are pulling it into workflows that exist. This is the magic school thing that we learned, to do what they're already doing, but more efficiently, perhaps with less thought, et cetera, et cetera. But to your point, from an enterprise, like reworking workflows, no.
Right. Which goes back to that idea of the operating system.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think, so the other thing I want to just to stay on this is the other reason I've been skeptical. All my friends that live out where you live in Silicon Valley tell me that, like, you don't get it. It's exponential improvement, and therefore it's going to, like, flip a switch and the world's going to change and blah, 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 blah. And Reed has this view a bit as well, right? That he said.
Yeah.
But I think what they discount is, like, they think through a very narrow lens of, like, how work is done.
Yes.
And they discount all of the human friction that you just started to allude to.
Right.
And organizational friction and legacy systems and stuff like that. Not just in education, but like, I think you're right. It's actually in almost every part of the economy.
Right. And I'll just say two funny things about that, because that's where I live, as you know. That's like the water that I swim in. And I do think a lot of that sentiment comes from, it is moving most quickly and most effectively in software development. I mean,
and that's why you see the product development. I mean, that's why I think you see, and it's amazing, right? Claude Code is amazing.
Amazing.
And it's like zeroing in on an application in a part of the economy that they understand
completely,
and it's a narrow set of I'll misuse the Howard Gardner multiple intelligences. It's a narrow set of intelligences. Like,
that's a
you know what my point is, though. Yes, I don't mean to lift that up as a valid framework, but I more mean it as an analogy.
Yes.
Let me say it this way more specifically, right? Which is, an interesting thing about these large language models is they're largely trained on language and images.
Yeah.
And like, we have, as humans, have lots of other senses that are not going into these things.
Right. And it turns out we have a lot of power and control over our systems and our lives and whatnot at the end of the day. Well, that kind of leads us into the last two tools that we explored.
Kira
and Magic School. And I mean, just a funny aside, I don't know if people could detect this, but I think we have to come clean and be honest. Like, both of us left one episode this season pretty, like, frustrated, angry. I mean, I had a very hard, long weekend after one episode because it really, like, shook me. They were different episodes. And I don't think either of us predicted that we would have our own emotional reaction or that the other person would. So I will come clean and say, I mean, I had a really rough weekend after we recorded the Magic School episode on a Friday, and it shook me. Yeah. And I don't know how you would describe your feelings
after the Kira. Yeah, could people hear the frustration? I don't know.
Yeah, you were frustrated.
I was frustrated, I think. Or that I will say on the Magic School one, little surprised me about the conversation. And so maybe that's why I didn't have quite the emotional reaction, was I was not surprised by the direction it went. But we can break that down. The Kira, I'll just say, rather than hide it, I was trying to understand in more detail, like, what does this actually look like? When you say you have a Central American country that it's all moving over to a new, like, that's a big claim. What is it like? What does that actually mean? Look like? How are you changing workflows? What people are doing? And when you say, like, contrast with Daisha,
right?
Because Daisha's episode we recorded, I think, afterwards, and that's when I had this big breath of fresh air to me. Was like, she's like, no, like, we went deep in the content as humans to really understand what it's saying, and I felt like, so maybe Kira's able to ingest anything of content and, like, magically make it awesome and personalized. But it took me back to a lot of stuff in, like, the mid 2010s that talked about personalization and data without like a clear view of like, how are we assessing mastery? How do we
Yeah.
understand this thing? And
Yeah.
like, if you don't have a viewpoint on that, I'm not sure how you're driving these behaviors. And so
Yeah.
I'm not castigating the tool because it was more like I wanted to understand more.
Yeah, and that was what I mean, we hung up and you're like, I'm so frustrated. I don't understand what
Yeah, and
it
it was more
does.
limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair, as you know, I've spent multiple hours now sort of getting under the hood.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting response, though, that and what it made me reflect on is Kira is currently in the complexity. So I always love this, quote that
Yeah.
gets, you start with simplicity, you move into complexity, and the goal is to get to the other side of complexity, back to simplicity so people can understand it. And I realized that I have been sucked into Kira because it is in that complex, messy place.
Yeah. So it's hard to describe.
So
right
much
now.
potential there, though, that I can see when I'm really geeking out and nerding out. And so I see the possibility there, but I'm doing like all that mental translation, I think, having dug in. But I don't think it's a simple story yet by any stretch of the
which is
imagination.
fine, right? Like a startup
Yeah.
doesn't have to be until product market fit is
Right.
so clear.
Right. And there's a lot to be figured out there and understood, but I do think it's the closest thing I've seen to the potential of being kind of this operating system, post-industrial operating system. And I will just say quickly that like part of your skepticism probably comes from like we get a lot of people calling us, emailing us, stopping us, at
We get a lot of
ASU,
demos,
GSP,
yeah.
telling us we're doing exactly what those people said we're doing, and then we try to dig in, and we're like, are you really? And so and you get more of it than I do, and so I bet
I think that's certainly true, and I think I'm also part of my skepticism is I kind of think you have to build for this H2, H3,
yeah,
and purposely say we're not building for H1
yeah,
to do if you're really going to be the operating system for this new model.
yeah.
I think anything you build in H1 that's optimizing around that is going to do two things. I think it's going to suck you out. Like, I think there will be values that are in contradiction with each other, and you can't do both. And two, I think because most of the kids are still in H1 and most of the money is still in H1, we're going to see what every venture-backed ed tech company has done, which is like start out with this value proposition that sounds great and then move back into the traditional system because that's where the
and that is huge tension. It's a huge tension, and it's a limitation in our sector, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I think venture does not help it because they have very rapid expectations of growth that are incompatible
with that. And so how do we get someone to build for H3? It's a huge question.
Let's go into it next year more because I think what you did at Summit, actually doing it interdependently with the school model,
I think that's right.
is and with the AI tools available now, maybe actually easier to do parts of that. I think that's going to have to be the answer, but let's hold off.
Let's hold.
So let's talk about Magic School because you had a reaction, but like this is a place where I'm going to say it. They do have product market fit. It's taken off like gangbusters.
Like crazy, which is, well, let me just say the parts that I really spent that weekend grappling with and struggling with. So the first is, I mean, the clarity of the purpose of Magic School being to make teachers' lives easier.
Yeah.
And so first of all, I just have sort of, that is not my goal or objective ever.
Period.
And it's not because I don't love teachers. It's not because I don't think educators are amazing. Look, I am one. I do that role, whatnot. But my goal is not to make a teacher's life easier. My goal is all about the young person. And I view all of us, me included, who are not those young people, as resources to that young person's learning journey to get them to their outcome. And so I just think when you orient around making a teacher's life easier, you by definition are no longer focused on the student. And so I just think that fundamental premise is problematic to me. Second, it just as a teacher who is really committed to the craft of teaching and learning and education, the I just feel like it sets this incredibly low bar. And, we had a dialogue about, IEP creation. And as you know, I had spent a lot of time in Magic School, and I was really disturbed by this like popped out generated IEP for a variety of reasons that was terrible. And the idea that that was somehow better than what is
And the
existing in
alternative.
school that had the wrong kid's name on it is like good enough, or we should be celebrating, or like that's our bar. I just can't. That's just not who I am as an educator.
Yeah.
My every morning I wake up and say, like, is this a school I would want to go to as a student, teach in, send my child to? And I don't want that does not meet my bar in any way, shape, or form. So I'd rather not be doing education than doing it at that kind of standard. And then the third thing was I've just seen this movie before. So
Yeah.
first it was, Teachers Pay Teachers, where we just throw these random activities up and you're just doing this activity driven thing. And then it was Pinterest, where teachers are just grabbing stuff off of Pinterest. And now it is Magic School. And it just really diminishes. It makes me so sad. It's
Yeah.
like, really? That's
Yeah.
who we are?
Yeah. I think I wasn't surprised by any of it,
Ugh.
which is why I will say I appreciated when you talked about learning styles and stuff like that. We were both pretty horrified by that, given the research clarity around that learning styles is a myth. In
That
terms
came
of a
up
way
in
to
a few
teach.
conversations we
Yeah.
had.
So full stop. I thought his answer on the IEP, I could appreciate it a little bit more, because I do think that the baseline is not what we would hope
Mhm.
they'll cross.
Mm.
And so I get it. And I think my overriding thing is like, it illustrates to me the problems with H1, which
Yeah.
is, and I sent this thing to you that I did with Rick Hess.
Mm.
I think because existing school models struggle with coherence, rigor, setting clear expectations
Yes.
for students and focusing on the student,
You're right.
frankly, any tool you sell into that model that gets immediate uptake without significant process and
Mm.
priority changes, as frictionless as that has and the other tools that you named have, it's actually amplifying those things rather than solving them.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. And then, of course, the business model of we're going to get all these teachers to use it, and then we're going to take the data to the school or the school district and say, did you know all your teachers are using it? You should buy an enterprise license. That was deeply disturbing to me. That's the seat that I sat in most recently. And I'm like, really? Am I going to be like, that's how I'm making my decisions about what tools we're adopting
Well, I'm
as
going
a
to say independent,
system?
though, right, of that. This is my bigger point right now. I think of like the individuals in the system are
Mm,
just doing stuff.
stuff.
And that's where I think actually education, again, I think the moniker we're tech backwards, Rip Van Winkle wakes up and recognizes the classroom. I don't think that's true anymore in this era,
Yeah.
because they are using a lot of stuff. In fact, districts are
Yeah.
have licenses to 3,000 tools on
Like that
average.
stat, you tell me that you've said that like 20 times.
Like,
We
it's
heard that.
mind-blowing, right? It's mind-blowing.
I know.
And it's a problem. Most of them we know don't get used.
Correct.
We know for the effective ones that it's like a 5% problem of only,
Right.
students on a certain part of the curve even using them.
Yeah.
To me, though, these are all model problems at the end of the day. And that's where I think
Agreed.
I can get my head around, okay, are we working on H1? Are we working on
Right.
reinventing completely? I can get my head around that there's importance and value in
Yes.
both. Personally, I really struggle on the first one, because I just think the model is so injurious at this point.
Well, and I think that one of the things that happened in the middle of the season was this backlash to this technology,
Yeah.
which we haven't even unpacked yet.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
literally we're mid-season and suddenly almost out of nowhere and overnight,
Utah, other
I mean,
yeah.
this massive backlash, and you alluded to it earlier. Look, we were already on this trajectory of banning phones in schools. And, we've talked about that over the years. I think we've both sort of settled in like, okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to
Like,
live with it. I don't love it.
I don't love it either. But I don't want to live in the space of like, I wish that we could have a culture in the school where kids could learn to use them responsibly.
No, I agree
So,
with that. Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I'm more intrigued with some of these other tools that sharply limit and let the educators have control. But look,
Yeah.
I'm not going to die
That's
on my sword there.
interesting. So
Yeah.
so that one, fine, we had sort of, but then suddenly overnight we are banning Chromebooks. We are putting limits on the amount of minutes that can be technology can be used in the school in a school day. We are saying that no one in a school can use AI, including the teacher, in any way, shape, or form. Which is the most baffling, mind-boggling. Like, how do you police that? What does that even mean? And these policies are popping up like crazy. My take on this is that there's such a lack of understanding and such a conflation going on. So there's all these cases and the heightened sensitivity around social media and the negative impacts on kids that is mostly sitting on their phones, but certainly it's online, and some kids are, districts are not using the filters and whatnot, and so they're maybe getting on their Chromebooks. So that's getting conflated with actual useful learning tools, useful learning technologies, useful operational system technologies, and we're just suddenly going to just ban everything. Seriously?
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Let's we live in the nuance. We like the third way.
Yes.
That's our
Yes.
trademark, for better or worse. Let's spell it out. We are simultaneously not thrilled with large parts of the ed tech market that is
Correct.
going into traditional schools. And so I understand why the backlash
Yes.
is emerging. I would agree that for the most part, they have not been useful, in some cases counterproductive.
Correct.
And these policies are limiting. So we're not going to let someone use Course Mojo for, right? Like,
right.
what?
That was the first example that we
That's
came to. Or we're going to say, like, well, if you use it and we're going to count the timer, you use that for 20 minutes. So you only have 40 more minutes today for the whole day to use any sort of technology. With like,
what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah. And so, or like a mirror learning, which Daisha also talked about, which very well studied,
Right.
lots of RCTs. We're not going to let them use that. And then there's been this whole meme that has gone on about a particular company, iReady, on the internet over the last few weeks, about how there's no studies behind them. Fine. I'm not going to defend them right here, except to say, that's true of every freaking textbook and material we have ever had in school. So let's have an honest conversation.
Well, yes, and all the negatives that you just said about ed tech are 100% true of all of those industries, if you will. The other thing, let's put once in this. There's a bunch of places banning technology used with kids under certain age, period, full stop. They can't use once to teach their kids to read, even though there's a huge human component to it. This is crazy.
This is crazy.
This is literally taking a sledgehammer to,
what is a real problem? And I've been thinking a lot about it. What's the role, blended and all these things that we've sort of movements that we were part of. And I was looking back and I was like, I actually think we were pretty clear, a station rotation, which is all I said in elementary school from a traditional district should even attempt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm partial to the flex model that in our typology, but I didn't think most districts had the cultures or routines or processes to do it. A station rotation model imagines a kid on a computer for 30, 45 minutes. A station with intent, one with coherent, it's not these bad implementations. But to your point, these blunt axe policies,
they don't give any discretion or flexibility or professionalism to the people in the school who are having to make these choices and decisions. And the tension there, of course, is wow, did we lose that? Did we deservedly lose that trust?
That trust, yeah.
Because we are making some bad choices about what we're bringing in. We are wasting money on things we're not using. We are not thoughtfully integrating,
So two thoughts here, because I think you're right. And so we've sort of made our point of view known. I hadn't thought about this, but I loved that Daisha said we're doing outcomes-based contracting.
Yes, I do too.
I've been saying this since 2009. Districts would look at me like I was crazy. There's now, through the Southern education group,
there's a whole group.
There's a boilerplate language. I think every ed tech company worth its salt ought to do a contract.
Well, let me just amend that because I'm in that space right
Okay,
now.
cool.
That's the exact place I wanted to go because
Okay.
I've sat on the other side and I was like, this is brilliant. I love this. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, it's good for me too because it doesn't help me if someone buys my product and never uses it.
Sure. Yeah.
That's actually bad for all of us,
Yeah,
right?
zombie revenue, et cetera.
But the problem is, even the outcomes-based contracting people will tell you, oh, we only really are ready to do this with very limited number of products where there are clear measures.
Yeah.
I think we've got to push on that. I'm hoping to be one of the people who will push on that because the space I'm in, they're like, oh, we have no idea how to
But this would be
that space.
amazing. I'm going to go into one of your other bugaboos.
Yeah.
This would be amazing. Like RCTs is one way to look at the world.
One way.
If you have outcome-based contracting with assessments and measures that we trust, it solves itself.
Totally.
And so, like, this is a way, I think, to actually develop incentives.
I agree.
To get those more grassroots driven,
Right.
What's the outcome we're trying to drive?
Right.
What's the right assessment or measure for it? And let's count it like conversations.
I agree with you. And like in my case, there are things I specifically know that our technology is designed to do. And so maybe those aren't yet, fully industry standard or something.
Sure.
But when you're buying it, don't you want to know what it's supposed to do and then figure out if
and
it
then hold
does
it to
that?
account for that.
And I think that's good for everyone.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think more there really interesting.
And I think that would be a great, instead of the bans, that would be a great place for that. I will say, I think it also, we may pull back into school models here for a second.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons alpha is attractive also to families is because they feel like they're making this big leap. Okay. And so actually I heard someone, one of my students said, they profiled 7 different microschools using AI in different ways. And one of their statements was like, families feel like, 2-hour uninterrupted block of time or whatever feels radical. Is it really more radical than like 7 45-minute periods?
Oh,
no. But like no one ever thinks that way. But it feels like radical to do, mastery-based progression and then like all this time for life skill development. And that, with what you said, still true. Like it's decoupled and that may have problems for far transfer.
And I'm not sure they're doing mastery-based.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll come back to that also. But like, I guess my point being, like, families are opting for it. And I think one reason that they are is not just the price point signaling, but also the old metrics signaling. We might not love the old metrics.
It's true.
NWEA map, I think it's like a very bizarre usage of it. And I'm just going to spell it out for those that, because I think people still are confused around what a norm referenced assessment often shows, which is like, imagine a y-axis of different score levels or achievement levels. And like, okay, I'm at the 90th percentile entering in. Relative to the people in my band, there's a curve. And like, am I falling below or above? Right? Them. And so when they say 2x, it's like 2x the person in the middle at my curve is what that's showing.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it would be shocking if they weren't hitting that because the traditional school is capping how fast you can move. We heard Reed talk about this on Dreambox.
Yes.
And so like, if you're now uncapped, I would hope that a student would move at least that much faster.
Well,
but
this is why I question if they're doing mastery based because that has nothing to do with mastery.
Say more on that.
I mean, where you're just comparing against the kid, that is not mastery based. Norm reference is not mastery based.
Fair enough. Okay, so this is where I think they are, though, is because they also have a bunch of criterion reference also going on that they didn't talk about.
Yeah. And I'm skeptical because they're like jumping between adaptive learning programs.
I think this is
like,
a big question.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. And I'm wondering where the feedback loop truly is in that. Some friends of ours in the industry who've spent a lot more time with the model tell me that there's a lot more
underneath it.
And I don't know. I will say simply raising the bar from 60% to 90% was a nice start.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy to me that
and we did that at
tech
Summit,
providers, but it's crazy to me that they didn't like before. But it reflects also on H1. But I guess my point being more, I think that's why they have these very traditional measures because it gives like as a parent, it takes away anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm making this big jump. What do you mean they're going to be doing a Tough Mudder and a press conference
Right.
with athletes, and like those
But
are
I
really
have these
fun.
familiar measures that give me
And so I
comfort.
think it's almost
Yeah.
taking the world as it is, not as
Yeah.
maybe we would like it to be.
That's an
And I think
interesting.
that's part of like it's why I also think you'll hear the bragging about the SAT score or the acceptance to Stanford or the, and yeah, so I guess I'm just explaining it a little bit, but and I think that crosswalk may be part of this process as more
Mm,
families gain maturity around, oh, is that possible
right.
through this? And so I'm
Right, right.
curious.
Yeah, so what I think you're speaking to is this whole societal shifting sentiments. And so, and we don't really talk about this, but this would be an interesting thing to explore next year. Like, is there a way to understand? Well, we know people who look at these things, so there is a way to
Okay.
understand
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Is the public sort of sentiment moving or shifting or changing? And what is moving it and shifting and changing? And so, are we in this sort of chaotic period where we're like people are holding on to
Old
things of the
measures.
past, but they're like exploring and looking at the future, and they're kind of like, there just feels like,
Well, and here's the
yeah,
relationship, right, to the tech conversation also, which is like, okay, my kid's going to be on this 2 hours of screen time
right.
with AI. It sounds creepy. It's a vision
Right.
model that's looking at
I
me
know.
and
Watching.
tracking my
Yeah.
attention. But there's a real measure that shows outcomes.
Right.
And so I think like now,
And this cool cocktail party thing where I just say that my kid's, running a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Tough
yeah, right,
Mudder.
right, right. I'm
Yeah,
running a Tough Mudder. And so like, but here, the legislation would ban these movements to
they would.
like this stuff as well.
Yeah.
That's not, I don't think that's what we want either.
No. I mean, we've never liked legislation like the type of legislation we're seeing popping up overnight. I hope by the time next season starts, it's kind of calmed down a little bit and people have sort of gathered their wits. I hope that educators are going and making logical cases as to why, with real tangible examples like we've just given about why these are not useful policies and can we actually put something more thoughtful in place. I hope the media doesn't, sort of fan those, fears and instead sort of brings a little bit of a rationality to it. God, that's a lot of hope. You gotta have it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think my hope on that front continues to be the families that are opting for these new models
Mm,
and that it's more grassroots driven. Cause I think
mm,
like, I think that's my other piece. And
mm,
we've had this conversation offline. Your question a little bit is it really going to be a portfolio of models in the future? Or is it
mm.
really one?
I'm so curious about this.
And I guess the reason I think it might be I think it depends how you define
Yeah,
model.
it does.
And I think it also depends on like, I think it's very hard to imagine all families lining up. I'll say it up front, like 1 billion people in alpha school. I can't, I would be shocked because I don't think
I'll
that's
just
where
count
people
me
will
as a
land.
complete skeptic. There's
Right.
no
No
way.
way. And so, right. But I think that's the point is like some families are going to say no screen time.
Right,
Great.
right.
Some families are going to want more than what alpha
Yeah,
provides. Okay. But let's take the air
yeah,
out of the balloon and let a little more choice with like some
right.
measures that give feedback loops to the families so that they know they're making
Yeah.
progress for their kids.
We can't help ourselves. We're like starting to foreshadow all
Yeah.
the things we're thinking about and what we're starting to plan for next season. So I guess maybe it's obvious at this point, but people might not realize that literally at the end of every season, we get together and we reflect and we make an active choice of whether or not we're going to do another
Yeah.
season. And this season, I don't even think there was a question,
No,
but
this was the most clear cut
clear
we've ever been,
cut.
I think.
I feel like so clear, so much more to explore of the impacts of AI. So I think we're going, right back in on that front. Two, I think we have more questions than we had even at the beginning of this season, more people that we want to talk to than we had at the start of this season. So like more
Yeah.
of what is happening with AI in education? What are the tools? What are the models? What's happening on that front? So I guess this is a good time to say, like, if you guys have ideas, people you want to hear from, things you think we're not exploring, we would love to hear from you over this will be effectively the summer, if you will.
Yeah.
I know it's like the one sort of traditional thing we do is like have summer break.
Have summer break. I know. We're a little traditional.
We're a little bit traditional on that front. So we want to hear from people on that front. And then we've got these other two kind of funny passion project
Are
ideas.
you going to talk about it? Yeah. Go for it. No? Okay. All right. We got a couple other ideas.
We do.
Are going to be our curiosity driving it and our desire to explore, but it won't be with guests, or at least,
or maybe, yeah.
But not.
I don't know what form they're going to take. I would, they're interesting. They're like things that keep coming up for us. And so I think they deserve a little bit of exploration in maybe not the exact way that we do the rest of the podcast. So we'll see how
those take shape.
Yeah.
Probably not like season 1 where we script everything.
No. So we hope folks will be excited to join us again for another season.
I think that's right. And send us your curiosity questions and like things that we've said that don't make sense to you. And we've both had a lot of hot takes today and left a few dangling. I don't know if
a rambling conversation.
I was about to say, did I give you room for everything you wanted to say?
No, definitely. I mean, this is just like an ongoing dialogue for us. So
also, people pick in where the things that we maybe had incomplete sentences or thoughts, or you want to hear more.
Definitely.
We're going to scratch those itches next season.
Definitely. I'm very excited for it. But before we do that,
should we do what we've been reading or watching or what we're going to do?
Should. And I
think I have to pull out my phone so I know what I've been reading.
You have to know what you've been reading. And I decided, since this is the last episode of the season, I have 3 things. So I'm going to go crazy.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And share more than one.
All right, go for it.
You want me to start?
Yeah, you go.
Okay.
You start.
So this one probably won't surprise people. I have just recently finished reading How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle by Ray Dalio. Mm-hmm. And people have heard me who've listened to the podcast before talk about his previous book, The Principles for Dealing with a Changing World Order, which was really profound for me in terms of these deep analytical approach to identifying these historical cycles that help me make sense of the world we're living in and what sort of feels chaotic. This newer one about How Countries Go Broke is a companion to the first one. Obviously, it's speaking to something that I think about and don't know a lot about, which is our debt and what it means if we're no longer the reserve currency, et cetera. What I will say about it is it's sort of classic Ray Dalio. If you like that kind of thing, it's actually comforting to me in a weird way. Okay. So I read it.
It's a critical topic.
It is critical as like a citizen, I think, and a person in the world. So I highly recommend it. I find it fascinating. So that's one. The second one is a podcast, that's become one of my favorite podcasts. It's fascinating. Interesting Times with Ross. I never say his last.
Ross Duthot.
Yeah. And
he was my year from college, so
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Different college, but
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I listened to this one at the same time I was reading the Countries Going Broke book, and they go together in a really interesting way. It's titled A Bitcoin Evangelist Tries to Convert Me.
Oh, interesting.
And it is like Bitcoin 101.
Okay.
Which, again, important topic, highly related to the Countries Going Broke. I was going to say
highly related to the notion of a reserve currency.
Exactly.
Also, right?
Exactly. So I found those two things a really interesting pair. And then the last one is, you know how much I love the Last Invention podcast series. I thought it's just incredibly well done. They do continue to add these fascinating, episodes here and there. But that comes out of a group called the Reflector Podcast, who actually does all of these other topics. And I just listened to a 3-part series titled Strange Bedfellows When LGB Meet T.
Oh, interesting.
And so good. It's this historical look at the movement. It's incredibly well done. The style that I love. And for me, very personal, lots of people I love are LGBTQ and living in, and it just gave me a lot of incredible insights and history and understanding and provocations, and really fun.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
I'll add that then to summer dog walks, I guess.
Yeah.
What do I have? So I'm finishing up Jump, which is by Larry Miller.
Yeah.
It's the story of he was on the Jordan brand and Nike, and it's his memoirs effectively.
Okay.
But he was someone who was incarcerated. He did some, pretty awful things as a young man growing up in Philadelphia. Spent a couple times in jail.
Mm.
Got his education while he was in jail.
Yeah,
Got a
fascinating.
degree, and then ultimately an accounting degree from Temple, and then went on to have this incredible career. And it's these reflections, and frankly, also how he was dealing with this like ghosts in his past that no one
Yeah.
knew about and he couldn't talk about.
Yeah.
And sort of, it's a really interesting like reflection on human potential
Yeah.
and how do we think about
Yeah.
this in people.
You were telling me about it last night, and I'm very curious
Yeah, and
now.
it's a great audiobook.
Okay.
So it's very lively.
Uh, on my
So,
list.
on your list. I'm doing a weird so I was trying to read books out loud to my kids,
Mhm.
because why not?
'Cause they're adorable, and
Thank
it's
you.
so fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, but you don't get because they're just so racing ahead all the
Yeah.
time, right? I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of opportunities. I was trying to do a couple Mark Twain books with them because I remember
Oh.
loving A Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. Here's the
Interesting.
takeaway: really hard to read it out loud. It's really
Yeah.
sort of funky.
I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
interesting choice."
but as a result, I'm reading all the Mark Twain books now, so to myself, and so like I know you're gonna laugh. I don't love fiction generally.
No, you don't.
Nope, but I'm enjoying it. So we'll see where it goes if I keep going through it.
Okay.
But I had this idea that I would culminate with the Ron Chernow biography of Mark Twain. That's
Oh
on my
my
list at the
gosh, you
moment.
be careful before you do that. Scott
Oh,
read it. Do you know
and
how long that
it's
thing
long.
is?
Yeah,
He was
I
in
know.
that book
Yeah, the
forever.
Ulysses S. Grant book was a long one that I read it by him as well.
I mean, the level of detail about one person's life,
Wow.
it's extraordinary.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see if I do it or not.
Oh.
But maybe it'll slow down my pace in books for
It
next year, and I'll have to
will. It will.
watch more TV.
You'll come back next season. I read one book.
I read one book this summer. Yeah, no, it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
But those are the things at the moment on my
That's
list.
awesome.
Yeah,
I'm not adding that one to my list.
fair enough. Fair enough. I'll commiserate with Scott afterwards. Huge gratitude, Diane.
Oh,
This has been
so
a lot of
fun.
fun this season.
Yeah.
In some ways, we've had a lot of fun throughout, but in some ways, the most fun
I
that I
agree.
think I've had. So.
Yeah, I agree. This is, we both do kind of a lot of sort of side gig, volunteer, middle of the night passion projects.
Yeah.
But this definitely is very special. And I'm
Huge thanks
grateful.
for all, and huge thanks to our audience again,
Yes.
because it does really fuel
Yes.
our curiosity and our desire to do this, and feedback keeps us going. Reminder, subscribe, rate us. We forgot
Yes.
to say that up front.
I know, but because we always forget to
I
say it. We've
know.
never said it, but it turns out it does matter a little. And
Yeah.
so if you can even take just, 60 seconds to put, 5 stars there and give us some of the feedback that you give us verbally or in writing, it helps a lot.
And let's also say thank yous to the 74 for continuing
Yes.
to distribute. Let's say thank you to Learner Studio for sponsoring, the team Danny and Lindsay who make this
Yes.
come to life at
Right.
the moment. Really appreciate both of them. Both last names Curtis, but not related. And just huge thanks to everyone that makes this work.
Yeah. Awesome. And with that,
we'll see you next time on Class Disrupted. This season of Class Disrupted is sponsored by Learner Studio, a nonprofit motivated by one question. What will young people need to be inspired and prepared to flourish in the age of AI, as individuals, in careers, and for civil thriving? Learner Studio is sponsoring this season on AI in education because in this critical moment, we need more than just hype. We need authentic conversations asking the right questions from a place of real curiosity and learning. You can learn more about Learner Studio's mission and the innovators who inspire them at www.learnerstudio.org.